From UBN Studios, you're listening to Unsugarcoated with Aalia, bringing you interviews with public figures and inspirational people speaking on self-improvement with empowering themes. And I'm your host, Aalia Lanius. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of your favorite social good talk show. Today's episode is going to be a game changer as we delve into the captivating world of filmmaking and its profound connection to emotional intelligence. Filmmaking is not just about capturing beautiful images, but it's also about capturing the hearts and minds of the audience. It's an art form that has the potential to make a positive impact on people's lives, and emotional intelligence is the key that unlocks that potential. The ability to understand and manage emotions is a critical component of emotional intelligence, and it plays a pivotal role in every aspect of the filmmaking process. From the creation of complex and relatable characters to the establishment of a supportive and effective team environment, EI is the foundation of successful filmmaking. In this episode, we're going to talk about that as well as explore how emotional intelligence can help filmmakers create compelling stories that connect with their audience on a deeper level, and how it can empower them to bring about meaningful change in the world. Join us as we hear from an amazing return guest and explore real-life examples of how EI has transformed the film industry. Whether you're a seasoned filmmaker, an aspiring artist, or someone who wants to make a positive difference in the world, this episode is not to be missed. Get ready to be inspired and enlightened as we unveil the magic of emotional intelligence in film. So here we go. Let's bring you our amazing return guest that I cannot wait to bring on. Karina Miller is a seasoned entertainment industry professional with over 20 years of experience in film, television, and theater. As the founder of Sparkhouse Media, Karina has produced award-winning films like The Big Ask, To the Bone, and Semper Fi, among others. We're excited to have Karina returning to the show today, and we're thrilled to announce that her latest film project, Hail Mary, is premiering at South by Southwest on March 13th. This new film, produced by Karina, is a sure-to-be talked-about film, and we can't wait to hear more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Karina Miller. Hello. Oh my goodness. So I'm so glad to have you back, first of all.
Thank you for
having
having me back.
I feel like my jacket, these buttons keep, when they start
smashing.
bringing, I'm like, hopefully the audience isn't like, what's that noise? It's the buttons on my jacket. Listen, thank you so much for coming back. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell me, I know that this has been a labor of love. Share with us when did you find out and what was your feeling?
Relief. Of course, whatever festival you get in becomes your favorite festival. But honestly, if I'd had a chance, like if I could just look at any festival and get to pick whichever one it would definitely be South by for us. So that was really exciting. We were in the second round of announcements, so that was really nerve-wracking. And also meant it's just been really crazy trying to get all the travel and all that stuff organized. But it's just a big relief because, with the market these days, it's always nice to have a festival showing when it comes to selling the movie and getting it out there. So far we're 3 for 4 for festivals for our movies. So that's exciting.
Yes. And, I do have to admit, I know my husband works with you so closely, and you guys, we're familia, as your husband says. And I love that because I think that one thing that's always struck me is the types of project that you pick. We had on the last interview that we had with you, we talked about the trauma and how these films usually address, complex issues. What can you tell us about the film, and what do you hope the impact will be?
It is a modern retelling of the Mary and Joseph story as a monster movie. But it's really about immigration and migration. The idea that we wanted to grapple with is this sense that not everybody comes to the United States because the United States is the best place to be. They are leaving their homes because where they live is dangerous. So this idea that, we should be keeping people out because they just want to get here because it's so bomb, not really true. They just because where they may come from might be at a lower socioeconomic level or not have as much industry or not be as fancy, whatever, it's still their home. And generally they wouldn't leave if they didn't feel like they had to because they were in some form of danger. So for us, the metaphor for that is actually the right-hand man of the devil who's chasing this young girl. So Maria is a 17-year-old girl from Belize who finds herself mysteriously pregnant and being chased by the right-hand man of the devil. And she is making her way up to the U.S. border because in our story, there is this thing called the Herod virus, which is very thinly veiled if you know the Bible stories. And it affects unborn babies or babies just when they're born. So it's modeled a bit after the Zika virus.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we started this movie before COVID. And so we had this moment where we're like, do we need to take it out? Are people going to think that we're like talking about COVID and stuff?
Right.
But it's part of the story. So the idea is that she needs to get across the U.S. border because it's the safest place for her to have her baby.
Yeah.
And I guess for us, we're just trying to kind of entertain people into thinking differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you're dealing with it on a metaphorical level, sometimes it's easier for people to grasp challenging ideas. The history of genre films, as we call them, or horror movies, really goes back to a similar approach. Like if you look at movies like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Blob, like those were dealing with like massive socioeconomic political issues, but they're letting people process it in a way that's a little bit easier. So I always say that I hope that by the end of the movie, you will have some unsuspecting fans cheering for an undocumented pregnant girl to get across the U.S. border.
I love that. Migration is something that's been happening around the world all the time.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's, of course, a story, and I'm going to have to remember the name afterwards, but there's the young women that were in, I believe, Greece, and people that were helping people coming off the boats.
Yes.
Right. And for just simply handing them water and, a jacket, they are being criminally prosecuted for helping refugees or people, like you say, that are often leaving a nightmare, or even, and I don't think that people recognize that displacement is an actual issue in the world. They predict that by 2050, 1 billion people will be displaced as a result of climate change and wars and political issues. So, acceptance and emotional intelligence, as we're talking, the way that you do it in film, I think that it's so important and it's valuable. According to the Migration Policy Institute, there were approximately 10.3 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States as of 2022. But largely those people come, at least for the United States, Mexico, Central America, and Asia have the highest, numbers of people. But as you point out, there's such this narrative. They're coming here to take our jobs. They're coming here to ruin our, take all that they can get, sit on Medi-Cal. And it's like, that's so not true. That's just not the case.
Yeah. And I mean, we come from a country of immigrants. So it's also just the kind of selective memory of things. But I think sometimes people they think of them as a group, especially in politics. People are kind of grouped together, like the caravan, the migrants, as opposed to individual people. And just the presumption that they're coming there because they want to have done this. And it's just that, where they are coming from isn't safe. Like they want to stay where they are.
Right. Exactly.
That's one thing we wanted to do with this movie is not make what I call misery porn. So this girl comes from a viable, bright, sunny, colorful environment that she lives in Belize, and her and her family are happy there. They don't want to leave. Things change when some guy comes out of the ground and starts murdering people.
Right. Right.
But also even along the way, even when she meets Jose he's in Nuevo Laredo, he has a job, he has a life, he has a thing. Like, again, this idea that every time we portray people from Central or South America, that they all have to be like destitute and covered in dirt and terrified, and it's like, no, people live their lives in other countries.
And they're educated.
Yeah.
They're doctors, they're nurses, they're, contributing members in their societies.
Yeah.
How did you become so interested in producing films that address various social issues, and what inspired you to, you shared about what inspired you for the undocumented aspect of immigrants in the United States, but, as you continue to select and find these projects, what really inspires you to do that?
I guess I would say there's a time in my life where I thought maybe I should go work for a charity. I worked for nonprofit theaters for a while. And I was like, I have all these skill sets. Like, I should go work for some NGO or something like that. But it wasn't particularly what I wanted to do, but I kind of felt like I should use my powers for good, I guess. But then I realized that when you make movies, if you can get a point across, you can often proliferate that message much deeper than a specific NGO might be able to. So it's always been something that I've looked into, that I guess not looked into, but I seem to resonate with projects that are both entertaining and also can make people think and feel differently about something.
Right.
I guess that. And plus, I don't like spending that much time and energy on bad movies. I just try not to make bad movies.
Yeah. This, you've been in film, you've been around film for majority of your life, aside from having worked on it. And you've also had world experiences. How has that shaped your perspective of the industry? And how have you best been able to navigate it?
I learned pretty early on that it's not that glamorous. And it's a lot of hard work. So, and it's not a meritocracy. So I always like when people say, I want to be an actor. I think I want to be an actor. I think I want to be a director. I'm like, if you don't wake up every day and want to do this, don't do it. It's grueling hours. It's a lot of things. And yes, there are fun times and you can definitely make good money. But I think I just learned early on that behind all of the shiny that people see, especially with movie stars and things like that, when people are like, oh, I want that lifestyle. And it's like, cool. Do you want to work 18 hours a day for 7 months?
Right. Right.
It's different. Like it's a lot of hard work, and it should be a lot of hard work. Sometimes it's not a lot of hard work. For people, they luck out and stuff. But then I think they are also, like, I know people who thought they wanted to be actors and then landed a television show and then were just really overwhelmed by how much work it is. And that they were in every scene and they had to keep doing this hard work thing. So, I appreciate the hard work of it all. I think it's an unregulated industry, which has a lot of pitfalls and dangers. Right. I don't think it's an industry that particularly looks to protect people or treat them well. I think it's important for people who are, I'm really lucky because, like, my skill set is being in charge. So I'm able to lead from the top down. But I think not enough, I think there's a responsibility for that. I wasn't ever, like, dazzled by it. Right. I was just like, I like doing this. It happens to, like, fall into some skill set I have. But I was never under any illusion of what it might be. Right. Your brother is one of the most famous movie stars in the entire world, probably. I mean, I think that people put him next to Jesus quite often. The videos, the memes, the kindness. And I gotta say, even from the short interactions that we've been able to with him, because through you, it's like, he seems to be such a supportive and kind person. How has, you've definitely seen the other side from having him as your brother. Did that also impact your awareness and knowledge of the industry in such a way that you were much more prepared? I think I learned early on from him that it was really hard work. He's always been really supportive of me doing my own thing. So I, as he said, he was like, you could have taken executive producer credits on all my movies. And I was like, that was an option? Not that I was like, oh, no, like, he gave me a special thanks on SpongeBob the movie. And I was like, whatever credit on SpongeBob? Oh, thank you. So, I mean, our careers are separate, I guess, in that way. I'm by no means on his budget level. Right. Ideally, I'd love to work together one day just because I'd like to afford him the protection that I give any actor I work with. So I would love to be able to. I used to always call myself Scrappy Doo. Like when people would get in his way, I'd be like, "Get out of his way," and they'd be like, "You're 10," and I'd be like, "Nah." But yeah, it's always been a bit of a weird thing. I mean, when I was younger, it was like my brother was in a commercial, and that was cool. And then it was, he was on a TV movie in Canada, and then that was cool. And then he did Bill and Ted's, and all of a sudden he wasn't my real brother. Because we have different fathers.
You're half.
I directed my first play when I was 16, and he came to my all-girls private school that was also a boarding school, so you can imagine how that went.
Oh my goodness. I can only imagine.
So when I went to college, I didn't tell anyone who my brother was. Instead of family photos, I had posters up on the wall.
Wow.
So I was like, I can't.
And how was it when everyone was going crazy? Like, I mean, were you just silently saying, he's my brother?
Yeah. No, I just said he was a big fan. I just didn't tell anybody.
Right. Yeah, because, people can get real funny. And, also to the, your journey, I mean, people have this thing about nepotism and like, oh, she's having opportunities. It's like, but I've watched you and you fight for everything on your own. You do so much. You're very, like you said, you're independent. And I know that he loves to support you because he's, such a family orientated person. But it's just, you stand on your own 2 feet, which is fantastic.
Opportunities. Like I always say, like I find if you have some kind of, like, the whole industry is taped together with matchsticks and gum. Like it's not a real thing. But if you have connections of any type or whatever, they can open doors. Mm-hmm. But I always say, like, if you walk through that door and you suck at your job and you cost them money, they don't give a shit who you're related to.
Exactly.
So I've always wanted to do the work. So, I mean, hey, I got my first job as a PA on a Harlequin romance novel movie of the week in Canada when I was 16. So, yeah, kicking down doors, just like taking it all in.
Going back to Hail Mary, in producing the film, what were some of the challenges that you faced in telling the story of an undocumented migrant family? And how did you work with the director and members of cast to effectively tell it, or to ensure that the right story is being told?
I know the biggest thing, Rosemary Rodriguez directed it. She was fantastic. You should have her on her show.
For sure.
She and our big thing was just making sure it was authentic. So we shot the movie in Mexico. Mm-hmm. We had an all Mexican crew. And, most of our our lead, Natalia, is Natalia Del Riego. It's her first movie she's ever made. Never she'd made a couple episodes of TV, never made a movie. She's in every scene. She killed it. Mm-hmm. Her father is El Salvadorian. He migrated on foot from up to the United States. So she had a certain kind of relationship with the project in that way. We really just wanted to make, we had people who auditioned for Jose, and I ended up going back to a movie. I was looking at movies. Gael Garcia Bernal directed his first movie. I'm going to butcher the name, Chihuarotes. And there was this young kid in it, and we tracked him down. He's like an Ariel award-winning actor in Mexico. That's like the Oscars. And again, it's his first movie in English. So he's like, I should get rid of my accent. And we're like, no, the whole point is, we're trying to make it authentic. And we had people here who are auditioning, and it was like, we're looking for people who are like actually from the community and we're going to be authentic. And they're like, I'm here to play Jose. I'm from Woodland Hills. So, it just wasn't going to happen. So anytime I tell any types of these stories, I always recognize what parts of it are not my story to tell. Mm-hmm, and just making sure that the people we're working with are really helping us when we feel like we need it, and being honest with us to make sure we're being respectful of their communities. Mm-hmm. Rosemary was incredibly focused on that, which was amazing. Funny story, segue.
Love segues.
When I was trying to find a director, and I was going through all these different shows and different bits of work, and I kept realizing that her name kept coming up. And I was like, what about this woman? So I looked into it, and I set up a time to talk to her. And she had emailed me before and said, I'm not quite sure I'm the right person for you. And I can be very persuasive. And I was like, I don't want to convince her and then be in a situation where it's not right. Like, I didn't know what it was. And so we had the Zoom call, and she's like, I just want to say, like, I don't know if I should, I presume you're looking for a Latina, and I'm not. I'm married to, my husband. That's where I get the last name Rodriguez. And I was like, yeah, I know that. Mm. And she was like, oh, she's like, I didn't know if that's what you were thinking. I was like, well, I did my research. I know it's, anyways. Right. So she was like, can we start again? And so we did. And, she just loves that community so much through her husband and you know, through her own approach to it. So I guess the big thing was just trying to make it as authentic as possible, considering we were two white women telling the story.
How do you hope, I mean, you know, is it something like this type of film that I'm sure is going to be talked about a lot because of its messaging, and especially that it's even controversial. It's taking, you know, what's a very symbolic journey for many people and then like changing it, you know. I mean, it's like, look, I'm not going to lie. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are beautiful, wonderful people, right? And in their house, they have lots of pictures of Jesus. And one time we were having, I shouldn't say every time, but one time we were having lunch and I said, you know, I just wonder how the world would actually behave if they had a real picture of Jesus up, and that was what people were paying attention to. And I just remember we were eating and she looked up at me and you know, I mean, I wasn't trying to be rude or disrespectful, but being a person who has actually studied the Bible and who happens to have Middle East in my background, and I know, and I feel that until we get those representations properly in front of us, people won't, the mindset won't shift as it needs to. How do you, you know, how do you hope that this film might even impact policy making with regards to, I mean, look, dreamers are on the table. I mean, I know dreamers that are holding out hope for people to recognize them, especially because if they're brought as children here, like in your story, I mean, would it be ideal, and what kind of policies do you think need to be changed when it comes to migration?
I remember when I was doing the behind the scenes interviews with Natalia, I made her cry. It sounds terrible, but it was in a good way. You know, she just said, she's like, I don't get to see movies starring people who look like me. You know, because Natalia does not have super light skin. You know, she has her heritage and it's apparent on her face. It was important for us to make sure that that's also like what our Maria looked like. I think being able to just see people as individuals, I think, is always helpful, especially when you're grappling with larger issues. If you can make it a very personal journey that people are following, it makes them pause, I think, sometimes when they think about the greater scheme of things. You know, I also think, you know, we did go through the movie and think like, you know, are religious people going to be angry about it or whatever? And honestly, like it's not sexy Mary, like shouldn't like make out with the devil or anything like that. You know, it's just, It's two young innocent kids trying to take care of something. And this, you know, and it is very, like there is a moment where they are told this is what it is. And they're like, there's no way that the second coming is going to be like with two illegal immigrants, you know? And, you know, the question is based, well, who would it be?
Right. And why not? And
if you get really down to the message of what I consider the Second Testament, not the First Testament, you know, how you treat your fellow human being, that's kind of what we're asking people. Like, what, you know, if Jesus didn't look like Brad Pitt, would you be nice to him?
Right. Which, to my point, he didn't look like Brad Pitt.
And also, like, how, you know, if we're going to take these things literally or allegorically, it's really just begging, how do we treat our fellow human being? And that's a choice we can make every day. And just hope that some of the policies that we have can be predicated on some sense of humanity.
You mentioned about how you filmed the film, or you filmed Hail Mary. Wait, it was before the pandemic? Was it right before or was it during? I thought you actually did it during,
so
right?
I got the script and we were working on the script.
Right.
I found Rosemary basically during the pandemic. And then it took a while. I mean, we started prep November 2021. Just as an independent financing and production company, we weren't going to be the first out of the gate to shoot during a pandemic. Right. And it kind of eased up. And then we basically shot our entire movie during the height of Omicron.
I mean, you know, just to speak to that, well, what for you did you find is like some of the biggest challenges of getting a project done?
I think
during the pandemic,
biggest challenges and actually opportunities when you shoot a movie in another country is to embrace that and make sure that you're talking to the people on the ground, learning what their customs are, not presuming that they do things the way you do. Like a perfect example of both emotional intelligence. And, you know, a big challenge was obviously COVID.
Right.
So it's Omicron. And if we all remember Omicron, it was all about symptoms before. So you would be symptomatic and shedding the virus before you would necessarily test positive.
Right.
So our COVID team was amazing. The head of our COVID department was an actual doctor. She'd studied at the Mayo Clinic. Like, it wasn't like some kid who took a course online for an hour.
Right.
And real doctors, real nurses, everything. So her whole thing was every morning, every single person who checked in got asked all these questions. And we were having a couple people pop. I didn't know what it was. And she's like, well, I think people are scared because they think if they get COVID, they're going to lose their job. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, well, then let's approach this from the kind of social emotional side of things. Mm-hmm. So I made a speech. Well, I made it in English. They translated it. I'm spending all this time today. But, you know, I said, look, if you get COVID, you're not going to lose your job. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, our big thing is keeping everybody safe here. Mm-hmm. So be clear. You show up to work, you test positive, you do not lose your job. You go home. Right. We sub in for you. I pay 2 people to do the same job for a week, but that's my problem. And then you get to come back. Right. But if you come to work and you don't feel well, and the doctor asks you if you don't feel well and you don't tell them the truth, I will fire you. Right, right. Okay. It's like, because we can only keep ourselves and each other safe. Right. Exactly. So, and then what we did is we separated the tables so that when you checked in, the first question you can just say, are you feeling any symptoms or whatever? And they can say yes. And then they can go to another table. So, because what happens is everyone's in line together and no one wants to say they don't feel well when there's someone like right behind them. So, we, you know, so it was cool because we kind of came at it from more of like an emotional and like social, but like, okay, well, let's get to the root of what is going on. And then after that, we were fine. Yeah, because people want to feel reassured and you want them to be honest. Yeah. Like, you know, and I mean, I feel like I had brought this up in one of the other episodes with another producer, but when Tom Cruise was going off on everybody, and like, I will say, I think, you know, he didn't call anybody out their name. He wasn't like, you effing loser, like going off like that, right? But everything he was saying, like, I'm on the phone with insurance, I'm on the phone with unions. 100% There's millions of dollars on the line. Like, you know, you need your people to understand the process. And of course, you know, like it's probably been very challenging, but then like you get to look back and say, but we accomplished that and we did it with style. Cool. I mean, I had the best crew I've ever had in my life. Rosemary and I have a very similar way of working, which is kind of odd in our industry. We find if you empower people and treat them respectfully, they work better. Shocker. I mean, even if I was a sociopath, I would be nice to people. It would get them to work faster, but I'm actually not a sociopath. Thankfully. There was some questions that I would get. Like, for example, they asked me right before we start. So final production meeting is the day you get everyone together and you basically go through everything you've been talking about for the last 3 months in prep. Mm-hmm. You go through every single day and say, okay, on this day, you know, you're going to do all these. Like, it's like the longest meeting in the world. And in movies, you have this thing called base camp. You have your location and then you have your base camp. Base camp is where your trailers are, your catering, your parking. Everyone is kind of like... Reminds me of Mount Everest, base camp. Yes. I don't exercise, so that doesn't qualify so much for me, but yes. And, you know, the idea is the amount of time it takes to get from base camp to set, you want to be the small amount of time because that's time you need to make a movie. So they asked me, they're like, do you want your base camp as close as, you know, all together as close to where the set is? I was like, yes. And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, is this a trick question? Like, no, I want it far away and like hard to get to. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, well, a lot of American productions that come down to Mexico have 2 base camps. One for the Americans, one for the Mexican crew. Oh, wow. And I was just like, to me, that's madness. Like, we're all making a movie together. Uh-huh. So, you know, I think one of the challenges sometimes is coming up against things that other people have done and fighting through some of that expectation. But a lot of times people think a producer is a certain kind of way or a financier is a certain kind of way or Americans are going to be a certain kind of way. So Sometimes you're
like, but I'm really Canadian too. So
yes, I do make a big point.
Like
about
when
that.
people are like, they're like, "Oh, you're so nice for being from LA," and I'm like, "Well, it's because I'm really from the Bay Area."
Yeah.
Although my mom was born in Los Angeles, my grandfather, and like all this stuff. But like, in fact, I don't know if I told you, I'm related. The Figueroa Boulevard.
Yeah.
I'm descended. Like when my great grandmother died in Los Angeles Times, they put she is from the great pioneer Figueroa family. And yeah, I've been diving into my history more recently. And when I say I'm multicultural, I am really multicultural. Yeah. But I was taken to Napa in the 70s because they left during like what were,
because the wine was better.
Yeah, the wine was better. And just what, they wanted the more suburban life. And so that's how, but just in general, people's perception. I love that you're able to break those stereotypes and give people a different experience that must be immense for them.
I learned a lot, in the past of learning, like, I'm their crew called a wrap, which not many producers are, but just learning early on that just because I'm there at crew call doesn't mean I'm the first one there, and that there have been people there for hours before me. If we're then doing a 12-hour day and you're like, okay, we're at 12 hours, that's clear. And you're like, but then learning that people have pre-calls. So they've been there 3 hours before you.
Right.
And so also wondering, like, how long does it take people to get home? Like, that was one thing I had to deal with in Mexico. And sometimes some of the creatives didn't like me saying it, but I was like, we only have 6 hours to shoot today. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, because in Mexico, people don't generally have cars. So they often have to take public transportation to work. So what happens is they come to the studio and then we provide transportation to set. Mm-hmm. So then we're going, okay, so from the moment they leave the studio, that's travel time. So we're taking into consideration work hours and all that stuff. But then you don't realize that some of those people take an hour to get home. Mm. So all of a sudden you're like, by the time it's like, I'm like, you have to think about like when they leave the house to when they come back, like that can't be 20 hours. It's not safe.
Right, right.
So
in that, like, what do you have coming up? What do you have, going on that you can share with us? We're going to be out at South by Southwest. We'll be attending that. And I know people are going to be excited, but what's next?
What's next? An autobiography of a very, very well-known and established and successable woman who has been grappling with schizophrenia her whole life. So working on that. I've been big espionage, like I that's going to be bigger. So like a big espionage spy movie that I want to do.
I love spy movies.
I'm not quite sure what social justice issue is going to be up in there. But, it'll be controversial. No, it'll still be controversial because it's shady. And then also just looking into new regions to make movies. So, doing some research into opening up more filming in the region of Dubai. So,
oh, good. I'll be out there for that one because I love
it.
Come out for that one. I know it's so. You're right. Like Joseph, even the type of EP he is and the work that he gives, people are always like, so I need to be an extra. I could be an extra in one of the films. Joseph's like, I don't do that. I don't go to set that often. Yeah. Less to qualify for the tax credits, but like outside of that, I'm not your guy.
And you don't want to be an extra. You think you do.
My hand. For yourself personally, I think it's always important when people recognize that other people do struggle or people go through their moments. Have you had any mojo issues you've had to overcome? Have you, how has this pandemic has been rough on a lot of people, but like, how are you doing? And have you had any moments where you're like, and then pick yourself back up and move forward? Like, what's the fire that keeps you going?
The fire that keeps me going. Espresso. No. I have lots of moments where I am mojo-less. I think the hard part is being able to like say, I just don't have it. Because I am generally one of those people who has it, at least the energy and the drive to do stuff. When you make a movie, you have to remind yourself that you've done like 3 years of work in like 8 months. So you come out of it kind of burned out. But also then you miss it. You miss that super high energy problem solving, and so when you take a break from it, sometimes you're like, I serve no purpose. And but also it's a lot of energy to then do it again. So those moments are always hard when you're just like, I just don't have the energy, because part of my job is I have to pretend, or I have to live in a world where my movie is the most important movie on the planet, and it's the only thing that needs to get done. And that takes a lot of putting yourself out there, put a lot of energy. And, after COVID, when you're just kind of like home a lot, going out in the world takes a lot more energy. So I tried for this year, I am trying to go out more. But trying to go out and see people either once a week, someone who is in my industry, have some kind of social interaction, whether it's like a lunch or a coffee or something. But people who I like, I was like, who do I miss? Or who do I wish I had met in person and I've only ever spoken to on the phone?
Right.
That kind of thing. I've been trying to do that. So not going out just for the going out's sake. I don't do a lot of schmoozing just to schmooze, but genuinely people who I admire, respect, or have some interest in our industry to kind of reach out and do that. So I'm trying to do that once a week. There's some big study recently about what makes people happy, and they're like, a lot of it has to do with interaction with other people and community. And when you're making a movie, you have a very tight-knit, intense community, and then you're like, I'll probably never see you again. I've struggled with depression my whole life, so I have my little toolkit of things that I do. And then sometimes you're just like, I ran out of tools and I think I'm going to go to bed for a couple of days. But I think the big thing is when you feel that way, having some people in your life that you can be like, I'm having a mojo issue. And because generally you'll feel that way. And then 3 months later, instead of you being the one crying at Coffee Bean, they'll be the one crying at Coffee Bean. And you're like,
yeah,
I remember when I was you and you were me. And now, so it's really just about having those people you can kind of admit that to.
Yeah, 100%. It's say it out loud.
Hard. Yeah.
And knowing that you're not alone, and that people want to be there for you and support you in the different ways. I remember reading recently something that Oprah Winfrey had said in producing the film Beloved, right? And she talked about how she learned, she to her and to many people, Beloved is a masterpiece. It's this wonderful, beautiful representation of a story. But ultimately, from the world's perspective, it was a failure. And what I loved about what she talked about was that she doesn't make content for people's opinions. She makes it, she releases it to the world, and it is what it is. It is what it is. She makes it with her intention and that purpose. When you do produce a film and you release it to the world, you kind of approach it with the same sentiment of, look, I'm confident in what I'm doing, and this is what it is.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't have Oprah money, so I don't just release things into the universe and hope that they do well and not care if they do, because
fair enough.
I don't have Oprah money. I work really hard so that whatever I put out, I know is quality. I don't expect everyone to like it. That's fine with me. I just want them to have an opinion on it. So if someone likes it, I'm happy. If they don't like it, I'm happy. If they're like neutral and they forgot they watched it, then I fucked up. That I'm okay with. I do think in the end, though, I am part of a business, and what I am creating is a business commodity.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people in that who've worked really hard, and I, do my best to make them in a fiscally responsible way so that if we do sell it, that the people who made the movie get to share in that.
And to your point, even with the market right now, it's like I have to explain to people constantly, just even on my own knowledge base, it's not just about, I've got this movie that has to be made. It's like you still have to take a business approach to it. There is still a strategy to it so that you can continue making films, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you're a one and done.
Yeah, and we're bandying around millions of dollars.
Yes, yeah.
And we're like, is it a 7 or 8, 10 or 12? Like, millions of dollars. That's insane.
Right. All right, we're about to get you out of here in a second, but I do have one rapid question that came from our team that they so wanted to ask. Your brother, Keanu Reeves, is famous for his roles in action movies. Have you ever challenged him to a fight?
No, but I knew about mixed martial arts before he did and took him to his first UFC fight.
Okay.
But I will say that before he started training with all these amazing people and knowing about jiu-jitsu, I was a UFC fan way before he was, and I knew about it first.
So you're the master.
So, I mean, I can't do any of it, but for the record, I was into it first.
I know. The team actually put in the notes, just kidding. Please don't hurt us, Keanu.
He will tell you he only knows movie kung fu. But,
right. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here again. I appreciate you.
Me.
I'm so excited for you. And I just can't wait to see what you do next,
Me too.
It's exciting.
I'll have to keep doing stuff so I can keep coming back.
Yes. I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our audience at home, as we come to the end of this interview, I hope that you, our listeners, have been inspired by Karina's incredible journey in the entertainment industry. From working in theater and off-Broadway to producing award-winning films, Karina's story is a testament to the power of hard work, dedication, and a true passion for what you do. Karina's not only entertained audience, but she's also shed light on important issues like mental health, family, and loyalty. She has shown us that through storytelling, we can make a difference in the world and bring about social change. So to all of you out there with a dream, remember that anything is possible if you believe in yourself and work tirelessly to achieve your goals. Take Karina's story as a source of inspiration and go out there and create something that will make a difference. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you've enjoyed it and we look forward to seeing you again. Go to www.unsugarcoatedmedia.com. Sign up for the newsletter so you can stay in the know. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, thank you for letting us be unsugarcoated.